So hello and welcome to this week's video here on the Rest-A-Saga Classic Car Restoration YouTube channel. And although I'm standing in front of my full-size Land Rover, we're back at the Toylander. This week we are doing some painting and some work to the chassis, and yes, that's right, the chassis. I'll talk you through that process in the video, but first of all we're going to hit some paint on the bonnet, which has been long awaited, get some primer, etch, body filler primer and then some colour coat. Also get the hinges fitted, do a bit more in the windscreen, have a look at some fixtures and fittings, and then we're going to look at the axles too, as lots of new parts have arrived and it's all very exciting. Although new parts have arrived, we're still in the middle of the coronavirus lockdown here in the UK at the time of filming, so that has put paid to some of my paint supplies, but we'll follow that trail as we go through the video and see how things progress, and hopefully some supplies will arrive by the time this video goes live. So let's get over to the Toylander bonnet. So as I mentioned, this is the Toylander bonnet, and I got the hinges on just after the last video really, and made sure it all lined up within Toylander itself, and I'll take you over and show you those marks in a little second. This dark grey primer is called etch primer, and it's got an acid component that etches itself into the aluminium of the panel, and it really leads to very good adherence of the paint to the aluminium, which is slightly more difficult to paint than steel. So start off with the acid etch primer, and now I'm going to put a little coat of the light grey in. I'm fully aware that this is in direct sunlight, so I don't want the panel to heat up too much, otherwise it messes up with the solvent evaporating too quickly and you don't get a very good paint finish. So I'll take the panel inside, let it cool down once the paint's dry, and just repeat that cycle. But there's not a lot of wind today and there's no dust being kicked up, so it's a really good day for some painting. So this is the next stage. As you can see, I've put a little light coat of normal grey primer on. Quite a light coat, as you can still see the grey coming through there. And you don't want to put too heavy coats on, as they'll take longer to dry, and you're better do lots of light coats rather than a few heavy coats. So I've got a couple of lighter coats. I can get my words straight, and we'll go from there. You might be wondering why I left the hinges on, mainly because they were an absolute pain to put on, and I don't want to lose the panel alignment, so the hinges are staying on. I'll paint it as a unit, and then I'll set the hinges taped up and silver, so I think that'll really make it stand out nicely. So now that the primer coat is complete, I've got a nice solid block of colour there, I'm going to put the colour coat on, and I actually have half a tin of the correct colour matched limestone paint left. Of course, this is all during lockdown, so I'm not able to get any more colour matched, but let's get that put on and get a nice solid coat on it. So I hope you don't think I've taken leave of my senses here, but I managed to run out of the limestone paint, and it's going to be a little while until I can get some colour matched, as I said. So I've gone ahead and painted the hinges silver, which is in keeping with the rest of the silver parts on the Toylander. I can then mask these off once they're dry, and that'll be ready to do the rest of the cream. Once the cream's finished, I'll take the masking off and lacquer it as one piece. I think that's the best way to keep it all sealed up and get a really good finish. And now that the silver is dried, I've turned it over. I wasn't really going to paint underneath here, but I've painted everywhere else, so I might as well finish what I've started and make a really smart job. So a bit of etch primer on the inside, and then I think I'll paint it silver, just so I'm not using lots of very expensive colour matched paint. So bringing the bonnet back over to the Toylander itself, because I think this is probably the safest place to store it. You can see the hinges are all nicely painted. Those will just need taped up whenever I get some colour matched paint, but you can really see it starting to come together. I can't wait to get this painted, lacquered, and then get the front panel in, and the front end is largely complete. Still waiting to hear back from Toylander as to the best advice as to how to fit the windscreen hinges. I've sent them a message on Facebook to see if they're able to help me out that way. Front panel sitting, waiting in storage. Sort of trying to keep everything in here nice and safe. Some of their bits I ordered from Toylander just there recently, they came very quickly. These are the little bonnet tie-down catches, so those will be going roughly there. They're quite smart, those will be pretty easy to fit. These are little windscreen latches, so those will just catch the windscreen, make sure it doesn't flop forward whenever it's not in use. And this is the spare wheel fixing kit, which I think I told you last time I was going to order. That will obviously sit in the middle of the bonnet, and I'll need a fifth wheel whenever I buy this set, and that will sit up there looking very smart. Other than that, windscreen, as I said, still needs to get fitted, and then I'm going to start on the running gear. I think I'll start in the running gear mainly because I can get the steering and axles on and then put it on its four wheels, and then it'll be easier to move around, and then it'll be electrics, and then it'll be largely finished. So definitely end coming in sight. It's a really nice thing to look at right now. I'm very pleased with how it's all coming together. So let's get on with the next bit. And jumping on a little while, really a couple of weeks actually, over the space of which this video's been made, I have moved on to the drivetrain. Now, I know some of you will probably be disappointed in this, that I'm not doing this myself, but having looked through the plans, I realised that there was going to be a lot of work in these different components. It wasn't just straight bar and tube, and there were going to be lots of things that I wasn't going to be able to do, such as tapping threads and cutting threads, making fairly impressive welds, even cutting little holes for grease nipples, precision engineering, well, largely precision engineering, some nice laser cut bracketry, the correct tubing, and it'll all fit. Something I was not necessarily going to be able to achieve on my own here in the workshop. So someone very kindly offered to buy these for me, and I took them up on the offer. So this is the rear axle and the two reinforcement plates, and the front swing axle with the steering mechanisms, and I'll show you these going together. But really pleased with these. They arrived today from Toylander. The whole lot was about £120, and I think it's definitely worth it. So what I'm going to do now is degrease them with a bit of white spirit and a cloth, and then what I'm going to use over here for anti-corrosion is this stuff, which is spray on galvanizing. It's cold galvanizing. It's not really, it's just like a spray. So that'll go on first. Then we will use some etch primer over the top, and then I'm probably going to use black hammerite because I know it's nice, really sticky, good stuff. But first of all, let's get it degreased, and we'll go from there. I realise there's quite a lot of painting footage in this video, but this is everything degreased and laid out in my drive, trying to avoid getting any paint on the tarmac, otherwise Mrs. Restasaga gets a bit upset. So let's get on with the cold galvanizing. And there we are after the first coat of that cold galvanizing spray. So after that's done, it'll be on with some etch, and then on with a tough black top coat, I think. Just going to wait for that to dry here in the nice evening sun. So apologies for this mess. As you can see, there's quite a bit more going on in the garage just at the minute, but what I've managed to do is get all the metal work for the running gear of the Toylander all nicely painted. Now, I was planning originally to put this in gloss hammerite spray, but it turns out I didn't have any in my stock of paint. So what I've done is used up the very last of the silver. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference. Oh, just noticed not a very nasty run there. Never saw that, but oh well, it's going to be hidden. The silver looks nice and smart. So it's had cold galvanizing spray, etch primer, and then the hammerite and 2 coats of that. So I think it looks really smart. It'll be really resilient to any bumps or scrapes, and even any corrosion setting in as well. So very pleased with how this has come out, and all the bits have been really nicely covered with the spray. Very glad I actually bought these parts off Toylander themselves. They're really high quality, very well made, and I don't think I'd have ever been able to achieve such a high quality finish. So other things, that's the fitting kit for all the fixtures, basically for the axles and steering, some nice little rose joints and so on there. But before I need to do any more, I'm going to have to turn the Toylander over, so I'm going to have to get Mrs. Restasaga down to give me a help to do that. Obviously before that I have to empty everything out of the Toylander, and then I can start fitting the back axle and potentially the front axle too, although there might be a little problem with that, and I'll explain that in a little second. Still waiting on paint to be made. This is really annoying. UK lockdown here is only starting to lift now. As I said at the start, this video's been made over a couple of weeks, so UK lockdown is starting to lift, so hopefully I'll be able to get colour matched paint made up very soon and get this lacquered so that it can be secured. It's just sitting there at the minute on the drill bit spacers, and I really don't want the bonnet to fall off or get damaged. So I'm going to have to set that off, probably over on the workbench, well out of harm's way, and find a place for all these other bits and pieces too. Get it turned over and get some axles fitted. So one step at a time, definitely getting there. The other update is the windscreen hinges. Huge thanks to those people who have replied in the comments to tell me about this, and I actually found it as well in the instructions in the Toylander build manual. These are made out of steel, so there's angle iron goes round here, and then it's welded to a side plate, which is the hinge. So I've ordered steel, and those will get welded up, painted and fitted, and I've ordered enough steel to make the two halves of the hinges steel, so it'll all be nice and strong. I didn't have steel that was of the correct thickness. I think it was 1.5 or 2 mil, and I only had about 0.5 mil, which wouldn't have been strong enough for any lateral forces. So I've ordered some appropriately thick steel as well, just waiting for it to arrive. But of course, the post is also very slow in the UK at the minute. So once this lockdown and coronavirus is over, the better, and life can get back to normal. But let's get this turned over and get some axles fitted where we can. And there you have it, one upside down Toylander. And my marriage remained intact as well. So Mrs. Rescue Sag helped me flip it over, and we've just put it across the table so that it's resting on the aluminium cappings. Those won't really get scratched just as easily as the bodywork would, and it means it can remain flat so I can take measurements and so on more easily. Right, let's get this back axle fitted. I believe one pilot hole is already drilled, and it's this little one here. That's included in the drawings. So then that's used as your mounting point to get the other ones fitted. So let's have a wee go at that and see how we get on. So this is the axle in place. The one initial bolt is there just to anchor it in place, and I've measured from the back of the bracket and the back of the bracket to the bodywork edge. It's 28.4 millimeters to the 28.4 centimeters to the edge, and it's 5 millimeters from the side. So I know it's really square with the back end of the vehicle, which is also pretty square. And even just by eye, the axle tube seems pretty much in the middle of the wheel arch. So quite happy with that. Gonna clamp it here and drill some holes and then bolt it down and get on to the front. That was quite simple. So I was actually quite fortunate to have stainless washers, nuts, and these big long bolts, which probably aren't going to want to come out now to show you, and they go the whole way through. That's quite a thickness of wood, and there's a bit of thread there, and you can see it just in there at the other side too. Phone's not going to fit through there. So just going to bolt those down, and these little plates go on the inside just to compress everything, so there's no point loading of the wood, which is never good if wood is point loaded, especially if it's structural like an axle, in case it splinters and breaks, which would be a bit of a nightmare of a repair. So let's get it bolted up and move to the front. And here's a view just with the tailgate up of the bolts and their little spreader plates on the inside. Obviously this is still upside down, and I still need to get those vent covers in there. That's just reminding me to do that, but looking nice and tidy. Quite pleased with how it is up here. It's all bolted down now, nice and tight. So let's get the front on. So here we are at the front axle, and as per the plans, you have to build up the axle assembly with front and back plates and a series of washers, both brass and steel. And I'm just using the Toylander kit for this, so not stainless steel admittedly, but it's all bright zinc. And I can always put a little bit of etch primer and paint underneath here if needed. So very important to make sure it's centered this way, and also equidistant from the front, which is why this bit of tape is here. And there's little holes under here that were pre-drilled for a purpose I've yet still to discover, and those are the anchor points. And then you have to use a right angle just to measure that this is the center line. So all being well, this is in the right place. I'm going to check all my measurements, then drill another hole, check it all again, and then drill the back two. And that should be us good to go. And there we have one front axle fitted. 4 bolts are all in. The main one, have just loosened it off slightly so the axle can swing. It is a swing axle, and that's why. And there's those little bump stops here to stop it banging off the bodywork. I can't really show you underneath, it's a bit awkward, but quite small washers. In fact, there were no washers supplied in Toylander's kit for any of these bolts, which was a bit weird. They do provide these, but those are 6mm, and I need 8mm because those are M8s. So I'm going to buy some M8 penny washers just for underneath, because otherwise it's just a small washer on the plywood, and I know the load is going up the way, but still wouldn't want it breaking through the wood. So that's something to buy once I can get access to a shop that's open and willing to sell parts. Definitely making some headway in this video. It's quite a variety. So here I have the yokes on. I'm not sure I would call them yokes, but they're more like the trunnions on a Morris Minor almost type setup, but steering anyway, done through this bit. There's brass washer up top and bottom of the center piece. I've put the grease nipples on both sides, and I've put these bolts on. I'm going to tighten those up soon. Now I'm going to clamp a piece of wood across here and make sure the two sit nice and square before I put the steering rod on the back. I'm not going to put the one on that goes to where the steering column goes on, because I haven't bought that bit yet. But once I have, I'll get that fitted. So I think that's where I'm going to draw this video to a close. I've done quite a bit of the work on the Toylander. I'm really quite pleased with the change of the bonnet, the undercarriage getting painted, axles getting fitted, and even a little bit of steering also fitted. So definitely making some progress here on the Toylander 1. Probably going to be a little bit of time until I make the next episode. It all depends on getting paint and parts and so on. But I'd really like to get this probably back up on its own 4 feet. I'm not going to put the wheels on for a reason I'll explain in a future video, but even get it on axle stands, that would be great, rather than on that picnic table. Hope you've really enjoyed this episode. I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button down below, fire me a comment. I'm always grateful to hear any compliments or suggestions or even questions. I reply to them all, as I'm sure you all know by now. So once again, thanks very much for watching. Please feel free to share this video far and wide. I appreciate all your sharing. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is a massive milestone for me here on the Resto Saga Classic Car Restoration YouTube channel. So once again, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Cheerio!